Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Two very important mitzvahs come our way in Parshas Vaeschanan that effectively serve to preserve all of the rest of the Torah. They are the mitzvahs of Bal Tosef, not adding to the mitzvahs, and also Bal Tigra, not subtracting from any of the mitzvahs of the Torah. What would be the purpose in these mitzvahs, and Bal Tigra specifically, in order to ensure, of course, that the mitzvahs are properly kept? That seems so obvious that it would almost go without saying, and yet that's exactly what the Torah says. As soon as we learn of the mitzvah of Bal Tigra, not to subtract. Torah tells us, V'lo sigru mimenu, do not detract, subtract from any of the mitzvahs of the Torah, lishmor es mitzvos Hashem Elokeichem, in order to observe all the mitzvahs of Hashem, your God. Why the extra emphasis? Why the redundancy? One of the leaders of the Reform movement once came to meet with Rav Azriel Hildesheimer. Rav Hildesheimer was one of the great gedolim of 19th century Europe. He was one of the leaders of Orthodox Judaism in an era that saw the Reform movement really starting to rise and really starting to grow, especially in Germany. So he came and he posed the following to Rav Hildesheimer. He said, the truth of the matter is we're really very similar, you and me. We both want our congregations to keep all of the mitzvos of the Torah. It's just that I'm a little bit more practical than you. I recognize and I understand that when we deal with such a large body of law, such a large corpus of law, it becomes very, very difficult and nearly impossible for a human being to actually effectively be in full compliance of all those laws. Therefore, it makes sense and it is reasonable to trim down all of those laws into what is just absolutely critical, what's really, truly necessary. Rav Hildesheimer obviously heard none of this, wouldn't have it, and he actually pointed to this pasuk exactly. And he said, that's exactly the message of this pasuk. He said, Lo sigru mimenu, says the Torah, that you can't detract from the mitzvahs of the Torah. Why? Because even if you are in a position in which you're telling yourself that by deducting, by subtracting from the mitzvahs, I'll thereby be in full compliance. I'll have the ability to serve Hashem as a fully compliant and fully observant Jew. It's exactly the mentality that this pasuk is serving to address. That's nonsense. That's ridiculous. Things are as they are. The mitzvos are as they are. The Torah is what it is. We need to bring ourselves towards full compliance, not bring full compliance down to us. Now, it's true that I doubt that we would ever have an interest in saying that, you can just jettison this mitzvah and that mitzvah, and this isn't really part of Torah at all. But as human beings, the fact of the matter is, we do engage in these kinds of mental gymnastics from time to time. It is so much easier as people who are already sitting on the target to simply paint the bullseye around ourselves, to say that this is where I am, and therefore since this is where I am, this is really all that needs to get done. This is all I really need to do. Not because, God forbid, that some of those other things that I'm not yet doing, not that they're not part of the Torah, it's just that, and here's the distinction, it's just that those are for the very holy people. Those are for the tzaddikim. Those are for the Talmidei Chachamim. Those are for people in yeshiva. Those are for the rabbis. Those are for, like the upper echelon, the spiritual upper echelon of the Jewish people. It's not for me. I'm regular. I'm simple. I'm hardworking. I'm honest. I want to basically just keep what I'm supposed to keep, what's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely mandated. And we sell ourselves short. And we sell the Torah short. We should be in a place where we say, if there are things that I've not yet achieved, it's not that they're not on the agenda. It's not that there is such a vast distinction between me and the holy people who actually keep those things. If I'm not yet at a point where I can bring myself to go to Minyan every day, if I'm not yet at a point where I'm really being kovea itim, to make a point of learning every single day, if there are corners that I cut when it comes to Shabbos, if there are corners that I cut when it comes to kashrus, let's be very, very careful before we say, that's because there's a difference between me and those very, very holy people. It's the very, very holy people who are so careful and insistent on the laws of Lashon Hara. I'm just a regular person and I, keep everything else. So that we say that it's still, yes, of course, part of the realm of Judaism, part of the realm of Yiddishkeit, part of the realm of Torah and Halacha. It's just that it doesn't necessarily apply to me because I'm not one of those very holy people. We need to catch ourselves when we recognize that we are having that sort of conversation with ourselves. Let's pause and ask ourselves, is it really true? Or am I just in something of a watered down version of actually detracting from what the Torah is, from what Yiddishkeit is? Let me continue to be on that path where one day I will achieve those things, even if I'm not right now or I can't bring myself to do it right now. The moment I say that those are for other people and I'm just different, is a moment that they're no longer on the agenda. And if they're not on the agenda, then indeed they'll never get done. Chas v'shalom. We should remember that, of course, many of these things are actually at the core of Judaism. Even if we can't actually bring ourselves to necessarily do them right now and just yet, let's remind ourselves that, yes, it's for me. It's about me. This should be part of my general observance and part of my full compliance. Let's make sure that we don't fall down that slippery slope of velo sigru mimenu. Don't deduct even for the sake of being able to tell ourselves that, yes, we're fully observant and we are in full compliance, if actually there's yet more work to do. Let's just try to do the work. Let's just develop that perseverance that one day, Mirza Hashem, we will actually be able to achieve that ultimate goal. Wishing everybody a very beautiful Shabbos.